The sea is vast, of course, vast, admittedly far beyond my imagination. I can't really even fathom what I read about our oceans, about their size, about their thunderstorms, about our oceans, their size, their depths, their indifference towards what we can call our best efforts, our best practices. There's so much that we don't know, a laughable ignorance, given that 70% of the globe is covered in ocean. You and I live a little bit like the kid who tells you he has $1 yet can't find 3 of his 4 quarters. Joseph Conrad, author, a 20-year merchant marine captain, he famously wrote books like Heart of Darkness and Lord Jim, wrote about what he knows from the sea. He says that it's unfriendly to every one of our pursuits, and at its very most generous, the sea is at best an accomplice to our human restlessness. More than anywhere else in all of creation does the sea in all its depth seem to guard unhoused treasures and unlimited proportions. The vastness often means little regulation if your boats are fast enough, and it provides easy solutions if your pockets are deep enough. The stories of captains and crews, their vessels of titanic proportions, and what they claim awaits them upon the water, it seems to always be to me a testament to audacity and to hubris that I don't think I've ever encountered in equal measure about what can be found on earth, or as it is or not is in heaven. Along mainland Africa's longest and largest coastline, the sea was indeed all of those things. The nation of Somalia calls that coastline home. The treasures to be found in the water off of their shores are indeed fast. The waters run deep. It's Davy Jones' locker deep. And there at the bottom you will find toxic waste dumped by the Italian mafia there to Somalia's ocean floor. When the dictator of Somalia, Mohammed Siad Barre, was deposed in January of 1991, with his corruption also went its functioning Navy, and with the Navy, the Coast Guard, and with the Navy and Coast Guard, the fast boats that brought regulation, that brought protection and law and order. Within weeks, the Somali coastline, known to be one of the richest, most diverse biological zones in all of the world, became a bit of the Wild West for commercial fishing, laissez-faire fever dream run amok. Vessels that were illegal everywhere, you find reliable protections and laws to enforce them. They began to appear in the waters of Somalia, bringing up unsustainable quantities of sushi-grade tuna. And back into the water went the sharks without their fins, tossed back to the sea, where the methods and mayhem of these boats was incalculable. Neither fast nor capable of hiding, these commercial vessels decimated local waters to the detriment of both those on sea and those on land. The wooden dhow fishing boats used by Somali fishermen, fundamentally unchanged for a millennium. They're simple and efficient, but they were no match for commercial fishing vessels like the Nahum III, which was owned by a Taiwanese outfit but sailed under a Omani flag. The Nahum III was massive by comparison to those unnamed dhows and those out-of-work fishermen, but the vessel was also slow and plodding, and it's there that the history of Somali pirates becomes the history of those docked, those out-of-work dhow boats with their diesel motors and their hungry, jobless crews. On March 26, 2012, the Nahum itself was captured by such dhows, manned by such a crew, having been dispatched from the coastline by pirate bosses that might have at one point gone about their business as if they thought themselves Somali Robin Hoods, protecting the fishing rights and waters for locals, but by 2012, all of that pretense was gone. And they were pirates trading in human suffering. The bosses of pirate outfits like those who would scale the high sides of this Taiwanese longliner with hooks on poles and knotted rope ladders became the very thing that they despised. They became like those fishing companies. And they targeted and rejoiced in those areas without regulation or enforcement that they could buy off or that were simply abandoned. And it's here that we meet a journalist named Michael Scott Moore. Moore flew into Somalia because of these pirates, because the pirates had captured boats and captured crew like that of the Nahum 3. Moore believed that he would be immune to the dangers of desperate men, that the sanctity of press would protect him, he told himself, that the hired protection would insulate him, even as he traveled to the very geographic heart of Somali piracy, all the while hoping to meet, to interview, to document the very pirates that would feed their families by capturing and ransom men just like this American-born German citizen journalist Michael Scott Moore, just like the vessel, the Nahum 3. He tells the story that on the way from the local airport, he was abandoned by the security retinue hired. Michael Scott Moore there along that dusty road was abducted. So old was the AK-47 that was shoved in his face. So old was the stock that one of the captors used to beat him about the head and push him into the car, that the stock was made of real wood and not the modern polymers found today. Michael Scott Moore spent 5 months aboard the Nahum 3, there with its 28 crew members, there with some other unfortunate souls captured by these same pirates. But 5 months pale in comparison to the truth that Moore was held for a total of 977 days. 2 years, 8 months. And it might have been less time, honestly, if it were not for the very hubris, the very foolishness that convinced Moore that he would be immune to the sins he came to expose in Somalia. Every bit the Western European free press privilege Moore enjoyed, he employed, he rationalized his excursion. He ended up pushing that very rationale, that very hubris, that very privilege, ended up pushing his ransom higher and higher. The Cambodian soldiers only demanded a few hundred, Cambodian sailors, no soldiers here, commanded only a few 100,000. But the mother of this American-born German citizen, Michael Scott Moore, was forced to call his mom at home in Redondo Beach, California, where my family is from. And he told her what the pirates told him: "Mom, I can come home tomorrow for $20 million and a signed letter from President Obama promising protection from prosecution." What Moore learned early in his captivity was that the pirates were desperate men. They sought a disproportionate payday. Even the lowliest pirates would pocket tens of thousands of dollars if this paid off, allowing them to leave piracy forever and live elsewhere. What made the pirates believe Moore's elderly mother could produce, like all Americans, $28 million from among her couch cushions, and would then be able to call up and speak to the president, is the exact same thing that deeply terrified the pirates. That was what America was known for. Moore was American, and they believed, as they did for every American, that there was always a drone circling high above, that every airplane was a danger, and worst of all, American hostages met, that it would not be long before American helicopters would be placed at the ready aboard nearby American aircraft carriers. And so Moore was not allowed to be outside without covering himself with the pink and floral blanket that he was provided. He was not allowed to look skyward during his trips to the makeshift shower and bathroom for fear that the planes would see his face. The pirates told boogeyman stories about Navy SEALs fast roping from MH-60 Seahawk helicopters and destroying hopes of these exorbitant ransoms as they left bodies in the rotor wash flying away. It would not take long for the fear of the pirates to become the hope of the captive. Moore knew better than to believe everything the pirates told him, but so desperate in the recesses of his fears, he started to believe, just as they told him that every unknown buzz was something. Every unaccounted for whirl heard in the night was indeed an American drone, a low-flying airplane, a helicopter coming to rescue, filled with America's most dangerous men. Moore spent 2 years stealing glances, looking up, 2 years pocketing a little LED cigarette lighter. Why the lighter had LED, I do not know. But he took it out to the bathroom, and every time he could in the night sky, he tapped out SOS, because he believed that surveillance was up there. He believed his salvation was up there. The Pirates gave Moore a bright red Manchester United soccer jersey. He discovered then that pirates would do laundry, as most in Somalia would, drying their clothes and under the hot Somali sun. And so after getting up a sweat every day, he did laundry every day, hoping that the spy planes up there would notice his red soccer jersey out baking on the rocks, believing then, again, up would be where his salvation would come from. On Ascension Sunday, we remember Jesus' departure. We conclude this traditional post-Easter season. The risen Lord, we've been told, has been with the apostles. He's been opening their hearts, their eyes to the gospel, expanding and explaining in ways he had never done before. And now the time has come, as we've read, for Christ to leave, for the church to now rise. Stay here, Christ tells the apostles. The Spirit is coming soon. Stay here. And with that, Christ was lifted up. He was taken atop a cloud, and out of sight, the apostles watch him go. They gaze up to heavenward. That's how Luke puts it. Eyes skyward, perhaps, as the psalmist would say, I lift my eyes to the heavens. From where does my help come from? While he was detained aboard the Nahum 3, Mort takes up reading a battered old Bible. Not out of faith, but out of desperation. He hasn't read anything in such a long time. He'll read anything. He started at Genesis. He made his way to the last amen of Revelation, cover to cover, and along the way, absorbing stories like that of Job and his unjust suffering, stories of exile, psalms of lament, the parables of Jesus, including one in particular, the unjust servant. Moore finds something there for him. Strangely, a servant forgiven a massive sum by his master, only then now to abuse another who hasn't paid yet a minor debt. Moore finds himself in this parable. Despite the abuse and the terror that's poured out upon him, poured out upon his mother a world away, Moore begins to reconcile his hatred. He begins to reconcile his desires for vengeance, his dreams of capturing a left-behind AK-47 and freeing himself from this nightmare. Moore sees himself as that liberated man who, upon prodigious forgiveness, only then returns to exact a pound of flesh, because he sees himself not as forgiven, but as simply lucky. The angels tell the apostles what is promised them. It won't be found from searching the skies. It won't be found from believing that all of God's promises are vertical rather than horizontal. The angel appears among the sky-gazing apostles, challenges them with an enduring question. What are you hoping to find up there? The angel asks. The promise is that Christ will return the same way he departed, which is to say that Christ will come back ground level, which is to say horizontally, which is to say Christ will return by being here, not up there. The Ascension story is a gateway to Pentecost. The day promised of the Spirit. It comes upon the church. Next Sunday, you and I will wear red. We'll tell the story of the Spirit. We'll celebrate that the Spirit dwells among us. Pentecost is the celebration of the apostles, but they're not ready. Rarely are. Why? They're still just looking up. Moore spent over 2 years searching the skies, signaling spy planes, buying into the anxieties of his captors, those anxieties that told him that they're always up there, they're always prepared, it's just a matter of time. Every sound you hear is an incoming rescue, is an incoming helicopter. And for 99 177 consecutive days, his captors were wrong. No Navy SEALs fast roping to save the day, no drone strikes, nothing of the sport. Moore spent so long looking up, believing that his salvation would descend from the heavens in a shock and awe, that he refused to entertain that absolutely anything, any sort of liberation, can be found from anywhere else. And so it wasn't until a grubby, dirty, malnourished, crying kitten made its way into earshot at the pirate hideout that Moore encountered, that Moore was reminded that most of life's miracles, friends, do not come descending from the heavens, but walk into your life. In the strange ways of the world, that kitten returned Moore's eyes back to ground level. It brought his hope back horizontal. Rather than awaiting salvation to fast rope him away from and be armed and dangerous, Moore decided now to look out into the world again, to see the desperation in the faces of his captors, to see the fragility that came in their certainty, to see himself as present, as active, and now as autonomous, rather than living at the mercy of a life forever looking up. In some ways, because of that kitten, Moore followed the teachings of Christ and said, in short, I'll stay here. Our faith, friends, always seems to speak of heaven and earth. But it will not be anywhere else, friends, but here. Anywhere else other than ground level, horizontal, any other way than come walking into our lives that you and I will ever find the Spirit in our midst. Our faith may indeed be promises of heaven, but angels promise God will be with us. Not only in death, but here, ground level in our lives. Yes, today, friends, Christ ascends, but you can only go up from here. He ascends, but he does so from among us, here among us. That's where we should be looking. That if we want to find Christ active in this world, the Spirit among us, we don't strain our necks searching the heavens, but we do as Christ invited the apostles that time before. We just stay here. Amen. I'll invite you now, friends. Let us stand and sing.